You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Holt.
Let's get physical. Come on and get physical with materials.
Gosh, I'm blanking on who that is.
I forget who it is too. I have no idea.
Is it, dang. I usually can pull those right out of my, you know what, Pat, oh, damn it.
Pat Benatar? No.
It might be.
No, I don't know about that.
I think it is.
Newton John?
Nah, you're fishing. What is
Olivia
it?
Newton-John.
Olivia Newton-John?
Yep.
Yeah.
The Aussie who's in Greece.
There you go. Well, here's the ironic thing.
That's a rabbit hole.
The ironic thing is I said, let's get physical about materials, and that is true in some instances, but in today's age, things are getting digital. So maybe I should have said, let's get digital with materials. Are you listening to it now?
I am.
You plugging it in? Wow. There are dudes like jumping in jump ropes, and Jasmine's not impressed. It's the 80s, Jasmine. There was a lot of cocaine back then.
Well, thank God I wasn't thought of.
Oh, man.
Don't worry about that.
Dudes in Speedos doing jump rope.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. Folks, this is Shoe and Show. We talk about all things footwear. Matt still got the music going in the background.
Paul's gonna kill it.
Fantastic. I love it. I wish we'd do more of that, right? Chris Hillier, are you here with us? Or did you drop off?
No, I was just about to hang up. No, I just wanted to say this show's gotten way better since I was on it last time.
Yeah, when we ditched the script many episodes ago, it got a lot better.
Oh, man.
We lost a lot of listeners, but it got a lot better.
We gained one, and his name's Chris.
We are growing.
You guys have listeners?
We are now the world's largest shoe podcast, actually.
Broadcast from Arlington, Virginia.
Chris, what's going on, man?
What time is it there? I'm doing great.
Awesome.
I'm doing great.
So Chris is our good friend
I'm
from
Santa Barbara this week. So that's good.
Nice. Chris is our good friend from Decker's Brands. He is the director of innovation there. So Chris, remind our listeners, you guys have a multitude of brands there, yeah?
We do. Yeah, we have UGG, which is our largest brand by far, but Hoka One running shoes is seeing tremendous success over the last year, and that's been something I've enjoyed being part of. So that's been a wonderful evolution. I'm working quite a bit with our Sanuk brand, which is a wonderful little brand that started off here in Southern California, and then Teva is another one of our brands, which I worked for Teva for many years. So I've been with Deckers for a long time, and then Kookaburra, which is a new brand for us.
What is that?
Which is also seeing some nice growth.
What is that brand? Kookaburra?
Yep.
What kind of shoes are those?
Kookaburra is fashion lifestyle. It's part of our fashion lifestyle group, and offering sheepskin product for alternative price points.
Cool. Awesome. So one thing Chris and I have we connected a couple of years ago, and we're talking about all kinds of innovation things occurring in the industry, and Chris has been working on kind of the digital transformation of many of these brands. And Chris, one thing that you've been working on with other brands and FDRA and technology partners is this thing called Material Exchange. And some people have heard about it. There's been whispers across the industry about this Material Exchange, and maybe
Andy Polk.
Yeah, hello, Material Exchange. I heard about it.
Stuff.
It's amazing.
Idiots.
It's gonna change our world. So
You guys
maybe
finally figured out what all those buttons do.
Actually, they don't let us control the buttons.
that costs extra. That's a surcharge. We can't afford that. So material exchange. Maybe you can explain a bit about this idea of how traditionally brands have been using these kind of swatch books to look at materials and fill materials and think about how they can incorporate those into designs, and then how there's a digital transformation happening across not just our industry but the entire world, and how there's kind of a need for a kind of a digital swatch book, man. Tell me what this idea is, what material exchange is, and where it's at and where we're headed with it.
Yeah, well, it's pretty exciting, and in fact, it's funny. Depending on who I'm speaking to, half the people say, "Oh, that doesn't already exist," and other people say that's going to change our life. So I'll start off just by the idea that, as you brought up, we are all looking up materials from books, and I like to compare that to years and years ago when we had to look for a hotel in a foreign country by looking it up in like a travel book or something like that, and how being able to put all this information in one place on a cloud-based database that we can filter and sort and whatever is able to change our life in the same way that going on to Travelocity and finding a hotel has changed our life, and as far as convenience. So from the material standpoint, imagine if you were looking for a camouflage print textile that was sourced in China with a MOQ and a price range and everything else, and you were able to put all those parameters into a website, and it was able to give you options, and then you picked the camo pattern that you liked the best, and downloaded it directly into your PLM system, as well as potentially visualize what that looks like in 3D. That's what we're trying to build. So, and it all sounded so easy, I think, when we started meeting a year and a half ago, but it's an ambitious project, so I've enjoyed being part of that.
Yeah, so the idea is where a lot of companies are now trying to create their own libraries and manage material specs and data and things like that. This is a part of that, where they can, instead of kind of data processing in all these different specs, having to hire someone to basically do labor-intensive data management. This is a platform where they can go to and find all kinds of materials from all over the world and pull that into that library.
Yeah, I mean, it starts off. You can take it from a bunch of different angles. So
Right.
So years ago, the larger brands started migrating towards having these PLM or product lifecycle management systems within their organization, and a PLM system very often, and should have your materials library, and it's not necessarily the material itself digitized, but the data that goes along with that material itself. Who's the supplier, and what instances, what colors are used on a specific product, and what are the costs associated with it, and how wide it is, and all these other parameters. We like to hold on to that data, so when we assign it to a certain product, then we have awareness of where that material is being used, and it gives us amazing analytics on our end to know how much of certain stuff we're using. We're even using it for sustainability now. Actually, our materials director, John Graben, put together this amazing program where we're able to use leverage this data in our PLM database, so we can have a better awareness of how we're sourcing our cotton, and how we're sourcing different actual materials because of this wonderful database. But like you said, creating this database is a very manual, tedious, project, because you're requiring, you're getting all this information from these suppliers, from various suppliers, and you're entering it in line by line by line. And, people have gotten creative and said, okay, well, how about if we enter create a portal so that supplier can enter into my database, and they can do the job of entering all their own stuff in there. But then you start flipping this over to the supplier's perspective, and it's just like, how convenient is that for them to have 200 customers and having to go into everyone's portals and entering all this data for them? And so for them, they're willing to do it because obviously we're customers, but it's challenging for them to manage all of that data input as well. And really, what we're trying to, the challenge that we identified is how do we get it so they hold data in one place, which is easy for them to manage. They manage their own data, and then we can access it and filter it and find the stuff that we're looking for, and then pull it directly into our system. And so that's really one of the goals of the material exchange is how do we make this so automated and clean and simple so it's turns into something that used to be challenging turns into something that's very very easy.
Yeah, and Chris, I've heard you tell a story about how you had to put on a big overcoat or a parka or something like that and like head down to the basement out in the woods in the snow, 12, uphill both ways kind of stuff, barefoot to find the swatch books that you guys, and talk me through kind of that, where you were in your career. And then, I think as you just pointed out, the future is super bright if we can pull this off and make this digitized in a way you don't have to go and flip through those swatch books.
Yeah, and I'll now I have to tell the story. Otherwise, that just sounds like the most random thing you could ever bring up. But my first job in the footwear industry, I was a designer for many, many years, and my first job was in Colorado, and I started in the middle of winter. In our materials library, so this is for people that aren't familiar with the concept of a materials library. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a room with a bunch of books in it that have from the suppliers that you work with, and the books might be from 10 years ago or from 20 minutes ago or whoever knows, and you start flipping through books and looking for materials that you want to put on your product, and they're wonderful. I'll start by saying that it's one of my favorite things to do is get lost in a materials library and just start flipping through things and touching materials, and I never want to eliminate, and I don't think there's any way to ever eliminate this fact that we need to touch and feel a material before we make millions of pairs of a product using that material on it. But I will say, and so the story goes, our materials library was not heated at my first job, and so there was a jacket on the door, and the first person that got there got the jacket, and I'd stay in there for hours, and you would take a pair of scissors and clip little pieces of the material and staple them onto a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and write down some notes and take them back to your desk and start assigning those onto your product. And you kind of have to take a leap of faith and visualize what that leather is going to look like on your design. You don't really know, but you have this little cutting of it and some information. But then you're also starting to work with, for instance, you're starting to work with your materials team and saying, hey, is this, what can you tell me about this material that I want to put on my product? And they're just like, oh, let me contact the supplier. And the second that happens, then they're just like, we sent an email to that supplier and they don't make it anymore. Or we sent it to that supplier and the minimum order quantity is so high that there's no way you could ever put that on the tongue only. You have to cover the whole shoe in it or, whatever. So there's all these parameters that we don't necessarily know when we're just in that materials library and hoping to find the right material for what we're trying to use. Or I like to use the idea, it's like, we're making shoes in Vietnam and we might order shoelaces from Korea. And how ridiculous is that? It's just like all they have to do is, throw these shoelaces in a box, but then they have to sit on a boat for, a couple days to get to Vietnam so they can thread them into a pair of shoes. It's like there's probably someone making shoelaces in Vietnam, but in the materials library, there's no way of knowing that. I mean,
Right.
there are ways of knowing that, but it takes a lot of forethought and care to ensure that all of these different things are in order. And we just don't have a system in place for being, I guess, disciplined about that.
Yeah.
And of that,
It
there's
sounds
lots of questions and a lot of silly little mistakes come up.
yeah.
So,
It sounds
so,
like it sounds like the process is disjointed. And when we first connected and started talking to, the whole process started after they started a phone call and got innovators and material managers and different people on the phone just to talk about what challenges that they're seeing that we could help all work together on and collaborate on. Because of course, all the brands compete in the marketplace, but there's a lot of stuff in backroom operations where we can all work together to eliminate some of the steps and processes and challenges and costs. And this is one of the things that came up was material management. And a couple of things you talked about was it's the time the time drag that happens when the material team is trying to connect with a supplier on old materials that they don't even know if it even exists anymore. And it could take weeks within that process of trying to talk back and forth to figure out if they have it, what the cost is, all those things that a centralized kind of digital database could help eliminate at the very forefront of the process, I think is what you're saying. And I
keep in mind that this is operating at the speed of business, right? So
Right.
it's like you're making decisions. It's like your tech pack has to go out the next day, and then and then you send your tech pack out, and then the materials team comes back and just be like, oh, you can't put that material on it. And you're just
Psych.
like, oh, we just sent out the tech pack, and they're just like, well, it's like go back to the go get the jacket on, go back to the materials library, find an alternative, and hopefully that one will work.
which is not what you want to
And
do
then,
to a designer, right?
Well, it's like you can imagine. It's like we're doing dozens of projects, a season or whatever, and you've got all sorts of different. And this is yet another thing: is footwear is very different than apparel in that. And I've been having a lot of these conversations lately with apparel companies. Is in some ways it's a little bit simpler, just because apparel companies, although they deal with minimums, it's a huge issue for them as far as colors and things like that. But we have so many different components on a shoe.
Right.
And so all of them have to be called out and managed from the materials, by the materials team. Whereas you think about a T-shirt, there's not a lot of different materials going into that. Or a pair of jeans is all kind of made from, you'll have maybe a lining material or a pocket material, rivets, thread, whatever, but mostly it's denim.
Yeah. I think the other thing people may forget about is one point you said previously was, people are trying to figure out how suppliers like punch in the information for them. But the challenge is that they have multiple customers, and every single customer has kind of a bill of materials sheet that they want filled out or a spec sheet filled out. And a lot of these suppliers are spending more time filling out paperwork than they are executing material and making sure that the brands have what they need. And so I think, when we talk about this idea of material exchange is essentially a searchable database where it cuts out that time and cost, where you can find things more effectively and efficiently on the front end as you go through the process. And then it trims down that communication time. Am I right? Like instead of seeing, having to go back and forth time and time again to figure out if the material's there, if you can utilize it, what the cost may be, et cetera. Within the system, as I understand it, it's being built that there's kind of timestamps. It's kind of like a WeChat, where you can communicate within the platform in real time and try to trim back those weeks that really start adding up in cost on development side.
That's right. So one of the things that we've incorporated into the platform is a message center where if you want to reach out to that supplier and ask for a physical sample of that swatch to be sent to you, because we know that's important. It's literally a click of the button. If you want to put it in a folder that's shared with your product team or your design team or whatever, click of a button, you put it in a folder or you create a new folder, and then you have this group of people that can all have access to those materials. So imagine your whole team going through and trying to find materials for the upcoming season, and you can all put them in the same folder and review those together and send notes to each other about them on the platform. But then, you can reach out directly to these suppliers. They get a notification. They know who you are and what company. This is business to business. This isn't absolutely not Alibaba for materials. This is very discreet. Suppliers are not able to see other suppliers on the system. This is very secure between you and that supplier. If you have a project that you're working on, which is an exclusive material being developed, and no other brand has access to seeing that. They identify that as being an exclusive material, and only you're able to see it. But then you have this open communication, and it's not. We're trying to make it a little bit more like, WhatsApp or WeChat rather than email, where you're literally just messaging. It's like being on a group message, and it's you as well as the other people that work with you in kind of the chain of command. So if a designer reaches out, then automatically your developer, the materials team, you can figure it all up. But there's this setup, so you're always talking as a group, which means that the person at the top of the group, the materials director or whatnot, has access to all of the communication that's happening for their entire company, going back and forth with these suppliers. So they never have to go out and talk to the team and just be like, hey, can you send me that email link that, for that conversation you were having with these guys? They're able to literally go in there and
That's like real time and money. That's real time and money at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this needs to come from the lens of the materials team. It's like they're kind of the epicenter, obviously, for how all this goes down. So if we can start replacing some of these antiquated tools that they've used, then and put it into one solution, then it really changes everything.
Chris, as you've talked about this project with folks, and you've been like out and about, you've been in our executive summit. You and I were in Portugal talking about it. You've been making the rounds and reaching out, doing a lot of outreach for it. What are some of the misconceptions of people that think they've heard something similar before or think they've been down this road before? And what are some of your answers to those misconceptions?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One of them is that, when I speak to suppliers, they're like, oh, yeah, we're thinking about doing something similar ourselves. Right. And I'm just like, oh, please don't. It's like the idea that every one of our suppliers in the next 3 years is going to have their own website. We have to start, sifting through 200 different supplier websites to try to find our things instead of one consolidated place. That's definitely something that I've heard. But I think that people are really quick to understand the importance of having one universal platform that we can look at things, as together. And from the supplier side, they don't want to be in the website business anyway. That it's easier for them just to have a platform that's already existing that people are already going to as a marketplace. So that's been one. The other thing is when we initially started, we talked a lot about this whole 3D transformation, which I'll say in the travels, the rounds that I have been taking, it's really happening in our industry. And we had a great presentation at your executive summit, Safir and I from VF, and talking about 3D. And I'll tell you, this industry is changing so quickly. But one thing about materials exchange is we were very much targeted talking about how great this would be for people to visualize these materials in 3D and then apply them through a 3D model. And that's one thing where people kind of shut down. They're just like, oh, our company's not quite ready for 3D, or we're not that far along with our 3D process, so we don't need that. And I think that the way that I respond to that is, and I think I've begun communicating it very differently, is material exchange is so much bigger than a 3D solution. It's really about communication and visualization and efficiency between our brand and supplier relationships. So that's, and yes, and the caveat is, we've built in the capability to visualize these materials in 3D. It's going to be, and this is a long road. We're going to be needing to work with our suppliers over many years to begin scanning, 3D scanning these material instances, thousands and thousands of them, so we can have access to those. But that is the future for sure. And I talk about this a lot in the meetings that we have. Is the future state is you find that material, you filter all through the materials on the material exchange, you find something that you're interested in, and imagine dragging that and dropping it onto your 3D model of that product and visualizing what that's going to look like as a new shoelace or a new toe cap or a new upper material. And the power of that, and then again, having all that corresponding data going right into that 3D model for that bomb, and saying, okay, that's the way I want it to look, and here's all the corresponding data, and we're good to go. That's a revolution, and that's something that our industry desperately needs, is the ability to visualize that seamlessly.
Yeah. So I think that's the idea, is that material exchange is building the future out for people when they get to it. But I also remember when we were all working together to set this up, we said that it had to be affordable and accessible. So whether you were a startup company or an independent designer or whatever it was, to a global footwear company like a Nike or Adidas that has hundreds of people in the material and design teams, it had to be accessible and affordable for people. And so maybe you and I can just walk through it really quickly, how this kind of works for brands and then maybe suppliers. So the brand, an individual goes in and they sign up for material exchange. for a very low rate, and I think it's a subscription for about a year. They can get on the platform and they can basically go in and filter search by pattern, by color, by type of material, whether it's leather, whether it's cotton, whether it's any number of components. They can, maybe eventually filter by price, narrow it down and find all types of materials, or they can, or if it's a large organization, a major company, the material manager can be the administrator and can assign preferences to different individuals. So maybe the designers can only look on the approved vendor list, and only the material management people can go out and find kind of new suppliers and test them out and see. So from a brand perspective, that's kind of the idea, correct? It's allowing people to go on, search, filter, find those things they would never find before in a swatch book, and kind of know much quicker if it's still in production, and then start those conversations. Am I hitting all the right points on that, Chris?
Yeah, that's right. So,
Okay.
I mean, the sourcing team can obviously reach out and look at new supplier opportunities. And there's even a map view, which is one of my favorite things. Is you can look at a map and say, we're looking into Myanmar or something like that, and I want to find some factories or some suppliers close to Mandalay, and be able to look on a map and say, okay, this is where those supplier factories actually are. So having the ability to do that all the way down to obviously being able to search for a specific leather article.
Right.
That's exactly right.
And then on the supplier side, the idea is they sign up also for a subscription, and they start uploading their materials into the material exchange, and brands connect with them through that. And in one instance, they can upload all that material and keep it up to date. It becomes almost their business center, where they can manage their own material quantities and make sure that they're in stock and manage all their communications through that. So it's taking them from Excel into an actual software solution in essence, and and that way they can make sure that who's looking at their materials and they're communicating properly. And I think sometimes for smaller brands, they still have problems making sure that the right materials that they've been talking about get to their product. And this kind of helps create certainty, I think, for the supplier and for the brand. It enhances the relationships in many ways, I think. And again, for them, it's a low cost as well, but it's a much more efficient way to not only help brands search and find things quicker and apply it quicker and test out things much cheaply, but it helps, I think, suppliers focus on materials instead of just filling out all that paperwork and trying to catch up over emails and all those different things. So am I hitting all the points? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, I think that's what we found in communicating with suppliers, is that they don't really have the most sophisticated organizational systems for their materials. I mean, as brands, a lot of us have invested in these PLM systems, but for them, they're still even the big ones are still organizing all their materials on Excel, and so that is kind of I'll say it's one of the perspectives that we've taken for this, is not just a service for brands, but how can this help suppliers as well? And I think it makes it an easier pill to swallow for everyone. It's like, if this is an easier way for suppliers to manage communication and manage their materials library and understand, and even, you can talk about the next level out, Andy, which is the idea that, eventually we will build in, capabilities where they'll have analytics as to understanding what people are searching for, and how they can start developing new materials which are going to satisfy what people are looking for. So there could be many opportunities beyond that.
Chris, what companies are looking to implement this, and kind of talk us through the rollout process and what are kind of the next steps for folks who are interested in participating?
Well, I'll say, without going through, and I'll let you guys, talk about brands that you've connected with. I mean, obviously I'm a competitor to many brands, so I'm happy to give demos, but as far as people drilling in and I'm not doing the business side of it. So, but I mean, some of the partner companies, Polaris has been there since day one. They're very enthusiastic about it. Obviously, working for Deckers, we're quite excited about it as well. And I've used a lot of people internally just for feedback onto how this is going to affect them. So it's nice to be connected to. It's nice to have obviously the Deckers teams that are able to collaborate with and give me insight as to how things might function better. But reaching beyond that, Wolverine has been there since day one and has been offering tremendous insight and help along the way. But there's been many others. I mean, I've had so many fun demos and just conversations with people, who are normally competitors, but in something like this where we're trying to create something, we can all come together and try to find tools that are going to work for our industry rather than just our each individual brands. So we've had great feedback. We've had great, I was talking to a brand, I guess a couple of months ago in their development facility in China, and they suggested it's like, we work super fast, and how great would it be if the supplier just put in there what catalog and what page in that catalog this swatch can be found. So if we do have that book in the library, we can run to the library and actually find that swatch. I'm like, done. It's like that's the kind of stuff we can just implement right away. It's another data field. They enter it in. They say, oh, that's our autumn 2021 catalog on page 24. You can find this swatch, and it's like that kind of stuff. And that's I wouldn't have done that on my own. That takes feedback and people being collaborative. Joanne Stetson from Ariat has been so helpful. I know you just had her on the show a month ago or whatnot, and Joanne's been so helpful. They do so much leather at Ariat, and she's been so helpful in helping me understand how to set up leather. I mean, we do it one way at Deckers, but being able to compare it and say, okay, here's some extra fields that we don't pay as much attention to, these attributes at Deckers, but they're very important for Ariat. And I was even talking to a friend at Shoes for Cruise, and they said, they're doing a lot of work product and safety product. So when you start getting into those fields, we're not doing that at Deckers, but they have a different lens on how they want to organize things. And the beauty of this is it can work for everybody. It's like Deckers might not want to pull that data into our PLM system, but if the data's there, then people can actually use it and filter it and get what they need.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part too, is that this system will work with whatever someone's using. If you're using Excel, you can pull the material information down. If you're using any PLM of any type, we're trying to work with everybody to figure that out so that when you pull a material into any system you use, it will help filter it directly to what you need and assign it to how it should be assigned. And we're working with a number of partners and technology firms to make sure that happens. And I think, from an FDRA perspective, we've been very proud to work on this and excited. And it's taken a lot of work and a lot of effort, but we're excited because we've helped create a platform for this collaboration where someone like Chris, who's been a very good voice and he's been a great tester of the system by saying from a brand perspective, this is what we need. And as we've built that out, then we're able to go out to other brands and get feedback as well, just like Chris said, and add to it and build upon that. And it's been great. And it's there's I would say it's not really a business, it's a movement because of that, because the brands have all worked together to make this happen. It's our industry. It's a collaborative industry. Everybody wants to work together to solve common challenges on sustainability, to costing, to all that. And we'll compete in the marketplace, but when we're looking at backroom operations, if there's ways that we can create commonality and work together on that, I think that's the way to go. Chris, I think we can probably announce that we're launching the platform at the Materials Show in August 15th and 16th in Portland, Oregon. Hashim, our good friend who runs the Materials Show, has been very helpful and very I would say he's a visionary in understanding what this means and how it has to help the industry. Trade shows are never going to go away. You still need a face-to-face interaction and still need to fill those materials, but he understands this is the future and he's helping us kind of launch it at that.
That's right. Yeah, Andy and I had a great meeting with Hisham to kick off this whole conversation in Hong Kong, the APLF show, leather show, and Hisham is so open to how does this materials selection process move into the future? How can we make it more exciting? And people that go to the show, it's like it's a bunch of suppliers with little tables, and you walk around in the same way that you did it a decade ago. How can we really revolutionize the interaction the excitement around it, because it is a pretty exciting thing. New materials really drive a lot of the innovation that we see in our industry. So it's an exciting thing to be participating in. But I think the platform, if we want to call it that we've been using, isn't so exhilarating. So this is a way that kind of brings life to it, and it makes it fun. Like, who wouldn't want to spin their shoe around and see it in 20 different materials before they decide which one they want to manufacture? That's fun.
Yeah. So I guess the main message is this is going to be launched at the material show. Everybody goes to the material show. If you're not at the material show looking for material for your product, you have got to be there. You just Google search the material show. You'll find it on there. We'll have a booth. Chris will be there doing demos for people, helping them understand what the platform is, and how it's going to fundamentally change their development process and design process when it comes to material selection and sourcing. I can also say you can learn more at material-exchange.com. There's a website that is now live that you can go on and take a look at all the different interesting points about that. Schedule a demo if you would like. Learn more about the platform ahead of its launch. I think with that, I'm going to flip it to Jasmine.
Yes.
For our fashion, footwear, and focus segment. Jasmine, what is hot?
Okay, so since we have Chris on, I'm going to talk about some materials I've been seeing for the summertime. Now, for spring, I seen that there were leather options, like the cowboy boot was really popular this spring, and that was cool, but it's way too hot this summer for leather. But I'm starting to see that suede is super popular, like even in the summer shoes. For the guys, I think a good option is like a low top suede, a suede sneaker. And then for the girls, there are a lot of suede sandals, even the UGG brand that you were describing to them earlier, and correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but the Kookaburra, am I saying it right?
Kookaburra.
Yes, they have some suede sandals too, and kind of keeping that same essence as the UGG, which they're under. That brand is under the UGG brand. So there are a lot of popular suede sandals out there. So I think those are good options. It's always interesting to see how people incorporate, materials that you don't think are for the hot summertime or for the cold wintertime, and it works.
It's a crossover. It's a collaboration.
Yes.
And I'm sure Chris is rocking them as he's an avid surfer. As he's heading to the beach, he's got a suede Kookaburra women's sandals on.
That's
all I wear, Matt. That's all I wear. Just had to throw that in there, didn't you?
I did, man.
That's hilarious. Chris, buddy, thanks so much for joining us today and talking a bit about this platform that's going to fundamentally change everybody's design and development systems. I'm excited about it. I hope you are.
Oh, man. I think everybody's excited about it. I think that, it's one of those things that it had to happen. I think, and I love to say it, just in this whole 3D transformation world, it's like, you go ask anyone, what are we going to be doing in 5 years? And you'll be hard-pressed to find someone that says exactly, we'll just be doing exactly what we're doing today. So we know that these changes are necessary, but, the reality is, who's going to do them if not us, right? I mean, I think this is our generation's mission is to, we have to take advantage of our energy and ambition and make some of these changes for the better of the industry. So,
right. Preach it, brother.
I think that in some ways, it's bigger than our footwear industry. I think this is going to touch apparel and handbags and furniture and other things as well. There's no reason to stop at footwear, but I think that's just because of where we live and what we love. We'll start there, and then it'll move in quickly.
We'll see where it goes. Again, folks can learn more about the Material Exchange on material-exchange.com. You can also contact me at FDRA. It's APOLK at FDRA.org if you're interested in learning more or catching a demo that we can provide to you. And, of course, if you're at the Material Show, definitely stop by the booth and learn more about the platform itself and also how it will change visualizations and change your supply chains forever. So, again, thank you all for listening. This has been Matt, Andy, Jasmine, and special thanks to Chris Hillier, the Innovation Director at Deckers, for joining us today. You can find us at Shoe and Show on the internet, on Twitter, on Facebook. If you have ideas for topics you'd like us to discuss or guests you'd like us to interview, please let us know. We're willing and able. And the whole goal of this show is to help people understand the changes happening in our industry, and hopefully help bring people together and collaborate and find solutions so that we can all succeed together. Again, this is Andy Polk for Matt Priest and Jasmine. Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.